Today topic is ASP.NET. It is a web application which is used to build web apps. Okay. And .NET, ASP.NET is a framework. ASP.NET, which is derived from .NET framework using system.web namespace. Okay. ASP.NET is a web application which is used to build derived from .NET framework using system.web app namespace. Okay, now go to Visual Studio. How to create web application? To create web application, go to Visual Studio. File, new project. Click on web. There you go and collect, not core, generally. అంతా కోరే చూపిస్తుంది. Core empty. A empty project template for creating that doesn't. సార్ చెప్పండి సార్. మర్చిపోతున్నాడు. ఏరా ఎవరు లేరు, ఎక్కడానికి ఇంట్రెస్ట్ లేదు. ఎవరు లేరు, ఏం చేయాలా? మూడు రాట్ల. సో .NET 6 create see application is created. Okay, core application created. If you look into the solution, you see program.cs file, app setting.json, properties and dependencies. You got my point. So when you create a core application, these are all the files will be created. If you look into program.cs, you see builder.web application. Okay, this web application class derived from the namespace system.web.web application. Microsoft ASP.NET Core.Builder. In that you will have iApplication Builder, endpoint router, like that. So many things will be there. Okay, so we will touch everything one by one. Okay, don't worry about it. Now, if you see here app.builder, first what happened, they will create a builder by passing an argument. Argument can be null. Okay, basically, what is the program.cs file will look for when you run the project? Main method. Since you are using ASP.NET 6.0 core and 7.0 core, what will happen? Program.cs file doesn't require a main method. It is internally has a main method. You got my point? So to build ASP.NET core, to build ASP.NET core, we need to use ASP.NET core empty template. Empty template using C#.NET as a C# is a code. You got my point? When you build that, the Solution Explorer contains what are all the files? Program.cs file, app settings.json, properties, and then dependencies. Dependencies, you know what is the dependencies? Dependencies are namespaces. All the packages and namespaces are available in the dependency. You see here, you have frameworks, Microsoft .NET Core .app, Microsoft ASP.NET Core .app. These are all the two frameworks which has been inbuilt. Got my point? And this one will has lot of coding, link you, reflection, everything will be there. I got my point. So this is the main code framework. In that framework, you will have all the namespaces. Same way, ASP.NET Core will have these things. Okay, so it's an empty framework. And then if you look into here, you see two applications. You have web application, you have IIS Express. Okay, always if you use web application, it will run internal. Okay, if you look into here, when you run the project, you will get a command prompt. Before it run in a browser, it will get a command prompt, which is called kernel server. You see here, the server is loaded. Got it? And it automatically creating a hosting config URL. No, yes. I got my point. See, you see here, this kernel server will create a URL and it will create the web server. I got my point. So this web server will try to run this localhost. Assume if I close this, when I try the server, it will not work. I'll take you. I copy this URL. I close it. Now open the browser. If you run, it will not get the response. Why? Because the server is not instantiated. Or you got my point. So how the basic happen is just 10 minutes chapta ante ivala. See, this is your web server. And this web server, you will have ASP.NET Core application. Your ASP.NET Core application here. Okay. ASP.NET Core web core application. ASP.NET is nothing but a web application. Okay. ASP.NET Core application. Right. To run this core application, you need a server. What server? Web server. So ASP.NET Core has a inbuilt server called kernel. Or you got my point. ASP.NET Core has a inbuilt server called kernel server. Or you got my point. So this kernel server, if you have a web client here, you have a web client. Web client. Arthamavutunda, Nitin. So this web client will make a request to kernel server. Kernel server in turn will talk to the ASP.NET Core application, will process the request and go back to the given the response back to the kernel server. Kernel server again given back to the web client. This is the development environment setting. This is the development environment setting. Sir, I don't want kernel server. I want to run in an IaaS. IaaS is nothing but a reverse proxy server. IaaS nothing but, if you want, you can draw this diagram. If you have a notes, you can draw this diagram. Here, any request will process through kernel server, kernel web server, where web application will be deployed by default. Web application will be deployed by default. Or you got my point? In ASP.NET Core, kernel server is the default server. Kernel server is a default server inbuilt in .NET Core framework. Default server inbuilt in .NET Core framework. They will ask you what is kernel server. You have to say in ASP.NET Core, kernel server is a default web server inbuilt in .NET Core framework. I got my point. So without IIS, without Apache, without Tomcat, I can able to run my application using web application of ASP.NET Core using kernel server. If I have a kernel server, I can able to build. Did I made a recording? Okay. Or you got my point. So, sir, I don't want kernel server to be exposed outside the world. So what I will do in ASP.NET Core, we can create a reverse proxy server such as IIS, Tomcat, Apache, etc. You got my point. So how to create a reverse proxy server in ASP.NET Core? Just go back, stop the program, simply go and select IIS Express. Simply go and select IIS Express. Got my point? When you run this IIS Express, you see, are you getting anything? Are you getting any command prompt here? Why? Because .NET Framework in turn create a reverse proxy server to serve the request. How this reverse proxy server will happen? In the same diagram, on top of here, you listen carefully. On top of here, you will have a reverse proxy server. You will have a reverse proxy server. Reverse proxy server known as IIS. So, let me delete this. So the request of web server will go to reverse proxy server. The reverse proxy server in turn talk to the kernel server. It is not directly talking to the ASP.NET Core application. Without a kernel server, you cannot able to run the web application. First point. ASP.NET Core application without a kernel server, we are not able to run. That is very clear because kernel server is inbuilt in ASP.NET application. Got my point? Got my point? So you have to say in reverse proxy server, whenever web client makes a request to web application using reverse proxy server, okay, reverse proxy second step, what? Step one, web client make a request to reverse proxy server, which is IIS. And second point, reverse proxy server, in turn will make a request to which server? Kernel server. You make a request to IaaS. IaaS internally talk to the kernel server because you are creating a wrapper of reverse proxy server to the kernel server. What is your reverse proxy server? It could be your IaaS, it could be your Tomcat, it could be your Apache. I got my point. So when the web application will process the request, it's a server application where you make a request. Example, google.com, facebook.com, yahoo.com. What you will do? In google.com, when you make www.google.com, what will happen? The request will go to the corresponding server. The server will in turn will talk to the web application of google.com. The web application will process the request, return the response back to the server. The server again will give a response back to the client. That by using a protocol called HTTP. You got my point? So kernel server. Third point, kernel server again makes a request. Again makes a request to the corresponding web application. Forget about whether it is ASP.NET Core or ASP. Basically, the processing will happen. Corresponding web application of core app. Okay. Fourth point where core app application will process the request, will receive a request and process it and send the response. Response back to whom? Response back to whom? Back to kernel server. Fifth point, kernel server receives a request, receives a response, because you are getting a response from the server after processing. Receive the response and give it to reverse proxy server. Same will happen. Sixth point. What will happen? What is your sixth point? Reverse proxy server. Right? Proxy server receives a response and give it to the web client, corresponding web client application, web client browser, corresponding web client browser. Right? This is how the processing will happen. When you make any request, the request will go to reverse proxy server, which is called IaaS. Now you see here, when you run the reverse proxy server using IaaS, your kernel server is suppressed. See the difference. If you go here, select this, when you run, the kernel server will expose outside. Right? It is automatically load the kernel server and then it will process the request. Now you see here, I got the kernel server. I got my point. If your kernel server is stopped, if I go and copy the URL, okay, if your kernel server is stopped, what will happen? This request will not process. Instead, what I'm doing, I'm using a server called IaaS Express. When you run it, your kernel server ID is not opening. It is opening as a browser. Now see the difference here. See my toolbar. It is processing. Without a kernel server, I'm able to process. Now see here, when you run, you see here, there is a one ID command prompt will come, directly coming with the browser. It internally talk to the kernel server and process the request. This is how the basic web application will happen. I got my point. Now, the second thing is how you are passing the data. See, you are my client. I am a server. Okay. How exactly you are the one making a request will identify by using a protocol called HTTP. HTTP is a protocol. Protocol is used to transfer data from client to server. HTTP is a protocol which will help you to transfer from client to server. Or you got my point? HTTP has three information. One is HTTP context. Second one is HTTP request object. I'll tell you all these things in upcoming sessions. Third one is HTTP response. We'll discuss these things in detail by tomorrow. Got it? So now you understand how the ASP.NET will work. ASP.NET is a web application which is used to build web apps, which is derived from the .NET framework using system.web namespace. To build ASP.NET Core, we need ASP.NET Core template. See, there is a one more issue I'll tell you. We need to install framework, downgrade the framework. I want to install the older framework. Okay, guys, we'll see tomorrow. I will build this. I'll come up with another framework as well. Nitin?
Yes, sir.
We'll connect tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay.